Welcome to the Dirttime channel. I'm Alan Halcon.
I'm Christopher Nirgesh.
Dude McLean.
Christopher, one of the questions we most often get, or I see a lot of questions across the internet, people are really consumed with researching and learning plants. But what they fail to realize is that you really can't sustain yourself off of just common weeds or anything like that. So the question is, talk to us about some calorie-dense plants that could help sustain us longer than just your basic weed we find in a yard.
Yeah, well, the greens are not, they don't have the carbohydrates and the protein that you might need. Now, we've got a lot of nettle at the base where we're standing here. That's actually a good protein green. But generally speaking, you're not going to live off of that. What you need are things like nuts, seeds, and roots. Okay, so you have acorns, which the Native Americans here lived on.
Well, we also know that in Cajamonga, the Native Americans were just overweight. I mean, that place is just full of acorn trees.
Well, they say that the West...
Acorn trees. Oak
the
trees.
Acorn trees.
Oak
the
trees.
Oak trees.
Yeah, I like acorn
The
trees
West
better.
Coast Indians were maybe some of the few that ever got fat. But you have to have things like different roots and different seeds and grains. You know, the wheats, the rices, the barleys, all of that. But what that tells you is that, and I never advocated, I don't think anybody believed that you're going to live off of greens alone. What it tells you is that people in the past were hardly ever vegetarian. They ate their meats. That's where you got your dense protein.
There is no primitive society in the world that was 100% vegetarian. They might be forced to for several months, but the minute they get their hands on food, on meat, they grab it.
Yeah. Yeah,
Well,
potatoes, for example, that's why potatoes were so important.
But that's my interesting point. It's like you come across some of these people that don't know any better, and they're talking about, well, I'll just go and live off of wild plants because I want to learn how to sustain myself. You're not going to sustain yourself off of wild plants, at least not if they're calorie
Long-term.
inefficient.
Yeah, not long term.
And fish and so forth. Well, there are many naive people, you know, and you don't know any better. You go out and you think you're going to sustain yourself, and then after the outing, they go to McDonald's and get a Big Mac. So that's how they get their dense protein. But generally in the wild, you really need to do a lot of work in planning if you think you're going to do it on plants alone. And primitive people basically did not.
So, and not to get on a whole tangent here, so people that are primarily vegetarians, what are they doing for calorie-rich food?
Okay.
Clearly they have their potatoes, you know, heavy starches and all that.
Well, in our society, we have access to everything in the world with our transportation system, and we could move things. But you have your soy products, right? You have your various grains and seeds. I often recommend, and there are other books too, but I often recommend Diet for a Small Planet. You familiar with that book?
Yeah.
Frances LePay wrote it, and it's been revised.
Yeah.
But she talks about the complementarity of legumes and grass seeds. So your traditional poor person's diet in Mexico, corn tortilla and beans. Okay, in the Middle East, garbanzo and wheat. Okay, in the Orient, rice and soy. These make complete proteins. The starving student, peanut butter sandwich, right? The wheat and the peanut, which is a legume. So there are traditional diets that will
It's
give
not
you a
the same
complete protein.
complete protein that meat makes.
Well, then perhaps.
It's not quite the same.
I mean, there are vegetarians who, through combining different foods properly, are supposedly healthy.
They get all the aminos out.
Yeah.
We've had vegetarians come on the outings before, and the first thing we say to them, you're going to just live on this food you're going to find in a while, you're going to die.
Yeah.
So,
Now, vegetarians can eat eggs, right?
well, yeah,
No,
I think
some.
it's the vegans.
That's the vegans that don't eat eggs.
Vegans don't eat anything.
How about cheese?
No.
Some people don't eat dairy
See,
products.
there was a long time I didn't eat meat, but I did eat eggs. I did have cheese. I had dairy products, and of course, honey is no problem, right?
No.
Well, a lot of people have told me they don't eat it because it's an animal product.
That's right. It comes from a bee.
No, it doesn't. It comes from the bee, just transports it from the flower. You're not one of those, are you, dude?
Yeah.
You are? Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Okay,
Okay,
whatever. That's
so
another
bottom
story.
line, in the wilderness, plants alone. Are we living or dying over the long term?
Well, in the long term, regardless how you look at it, we're dying.
Okay. Can you sustain yourself for an
No, I meant
extended...
that in the general sense.
Can you sustain yourself for an extended amount of time, plants alone, in the wilderness?
In a short term, certainly. Long term, it depends how much work you're doing, what is the weather conditions, what kind of plants you're actually getting. Certainly over periods of time, you can do it. I've met people personally during World War II They got very limited supplies. They ate nettles that we have growing here, and they ate cattails, which are common all throughout Europe.
You've met people during World War II?
I met people who lived through
Okay.
World War II.
He's older than we thought.
I wasn't around during World War II.
Okay.
Why does he get that little smirk on his face?
the way you said it.
It's the way you said it. I'm all, what?
From World War II, from Europe.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, we have acorns.
Acorns
From
are
the oak tree.
acorns are aplenty. The desert Indians have mesquite, which is almost a complete protein. There's jojoba. There is a lot of
Roots and tubers.
roots, tubers, seeds, nuts, that kind of thing.
Okay.
Gathering all those things is going to depend on how many calories you're expending to get them to.
Right.
true.
If you're burning more calories than you're taking in, you still have a calorie deficit.
Yeah.
So there you go. There again, it shows you economy of motion, efficiency.
But if you go to the right place, I think it's a net gain.
But if you don't know where that is, if you're still searching,
Well, if
you're
you're
having a hard
if you're
time.
lost and stranded, you're always you're always working against the flow. That's true. People do die when they get lost. That's a fact. That's why you do all this stuff ahead of time. That's why you you learn about the plants and you try them in a more casual setting, so you don't have to undergo that. So it's
Then that's another thing that always gets me. People will pick up a plant and say, "Well, this doesn't taste good." Well, you use it like a salad. If you have a little dressing to put on, it sure makes a big difference. Whatever you have with you, even if you just carry a little bit of olive oil, it makes a difference how you can eat those things.
Salt, pepper, a little bit of olive oil, some lime, whatever. We have fruits for heavy sugars. Anyway, Alan Halcon, Christopher Nurgic, Dune McClain. We'll see you next time on Dirttime.com.